Jay, are there icons that explain the theological reality, but not the historical reality, such as the icon of Ascension and Pentecost, which shows Paul present with the apostles, but he wasn't there?
Yeah, but if you look at the argumentation as to that actually comes up in the iconography chapter in this, and the dispute is over. Even though Paul wasn't there in terms of time and space, he is there in terms of the theology. So the point is not that every icon is only depicting historical events. The icons are depicting historical and eternal realities at once. Both. It's a both and. So you misunderstood my comment, my clarification, as if I was saying that icons are only depicting historical realities. They're depicting historical realities and eternal realities at the same time. And sometimes those theological realities surpass and transcend the historical realities. But that's not a denial of the historical reality, because there's a debate, there's a discussion over whether Paul is present there because he's one of the apostles, even though he wasn't literally standing there at Pentecost.
Architecture is important as iconography in the Orthodox Church. I'm aware of the vision for Hagia Sophia and the Easter pointing altars. Any more points? So the main answer I will kind of give is that, well, there's a lot of precedent from the Old Testament liturgical structure itself, right? Whether the usage of iconography themselves, the nave, the altar, the kind of purpose of the structure, the architecture, all of that has precedence in the Old Testament liturgical structure. But this is something that is also up your speed, Jay. So what would you also add, like, to the importance of the architecture? Why do Orthodox churches look the specific way they do?
Mystagogy of the church. And that's a little work by St. Maximus. And he talks about the structure and symbolism of the church. So it does have an important role. And there are, strictures and limitations on how the church can be built. So it is important. I don't think it's as important as iconographic theology, because it's, the iconography is more of a direct presentation of the theology. And sometimes the church, sometimes people have to rent another person's building, to do services. So, but it does matter, and eventually the theology seeps into the architecture. Sure.
I definitely agree. I think the architecture, it's more like the way to describe this, especially in the early Christian persecutions, is that the basis for what we do, our worship, is fundamentally internal, right? That's like the most crucial thing. And so when we talk about externals like architecture, even iconography, even though that's part of the internal, right, worship service due to the theology of iconography, with the Son being the icon of the Father and all of that kind of becomes more manifested over time, and the possibilities emerge as well, right? So this is why you will see, this is why obviously there's a vast difference in architecture within the early church pre-St. Constantine and post-St. Constantine, because, there wasn't really even a possibility to kind of showcase the manifestation of Christian worship and architecture, and even still some places today, right? Like there's apartment churches, there's places that people rent, they are used as Roman Catholic churches or Anglican churches, and they are used, by renting as Orthodox churches to conduct service, right? So it's not, as you said, it's not like it's a thing that you necessarily have to have in order to have correct service, but it is something that is an outworking of the liturgy itself, and the possibility does emerge, right? So I recently heard the OCA priest say the current canon was not affirmed by an ecumenical council, and certain Russian Orthodox churches have a different canon. Is this true? I think that you are definitely the expert on church canons on that front, but...
Was he talking about the canon of Scripture, or is he talking about
canon of Scripture? Canon of Scripture. I definitely...
Yeah, so, there's... in the Orthodox view, there's a little more flexibility on this. So, like, some of the Russian Bibles have, I think, one of the extra books of Esdras. So, like, they have, like, third Esdras or something. So, but it's not that big of a deal, because, the Orthodox Church, we don't have a Protestant view of the canon where, like, there has to be this one statement of a canon from a list of books from the council. And then everything hinges on that. Because, for one, if you think about it, if the canon is somewhat flexible for the first 6 centuries, then obviously we believe that people can be, you know, saved even if they have, you know, one extra deuterocanonical book, or they don't even believe the deuterocanonical books. It's not, you know, Saint Jerome didn't think they were canonical, but he's still a saint. So I'm not saying that today you're free to do whatever you want with the canon, but if the Russian Orthodox Church, if Russian Bibles have an extra deuterocanonical text, I don't see why that's any different. So, but beyond that, I'm not sure exactly what he means by that. The current canon is not, the current canon is affirmed by the ecumenical councils. So that's not true. It's the Sixth Council. I think it's the Trullo Council lists it, and then it's appended to the Sixth Council and then restated in the Seventh. So there is a list of canon that the Orthodox Church accepts. But if there's some tradition, you know, where the Russians, for example, have this extra book of Esdras, it's not that big of a deal.
Yeah, and I will also, well, one thing I will kind of add is that at the end of the day, the doctrine that is manifested and exposited is to the church, because the church is the pillar and ground of truth. So this explains the distinction in the understanding that we have from the various different other Protestant sects on the canon. As why don't you like Ancient Faith Radio? It's because they promote certain completely heterodox things, and they don't do anything about it, anything to fix. They are too lukewarm. That's the basics that I will say, is that they're basically way too lukewarm. There's some good content there, and then there's some absolutely horrendous content that no one should look at. And I think they really try to make Orthodoxy like appeal to normies, which in a sense, okay, that's cool if you can do it in terms of packaging, but when they mix certain doctrines into that normie packaging, I think that's the big problem. And they have a huge tendency to do something like that. So those are my basic reasons, right?
Yeah, they've been pushing for a long time all kinds of watered down heterodox ideas, you know, promoting authors that are pushing for women priests. I mean, promoting authors that, you know, attend Abrasian events, Skittles events. I mean, that just should be obvious too if you're familiar with what they push. I mean, they've been doing it for like 20 years. So
yeah, and we already have videos and streams talking about this.